The date is February 12th, 2025. The time is
Recording in progress.
And this is the City Council meeting for February 12th. The first thing on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. So we all stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the adoption of the agenda. Anybody want to make a motion on that? Oh, no, there's a motion on it. I move to approve the agenda for February 12th, 2025 City Council meeting and add agenda item number F, which is a closed session. So we'll close this at a certain time so the council meeting for a private session. We'll go on to item number B, consent agenda.
Oh, we need a second.
What?
We need a second.
Oh, that's right.
So I'll second it.
Okay, now we take a vote, right?
Yeah.
Jennifer?
Jenny, aye.
Scott, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
Ron, aye. I got to slow
Mayor,
down.
I just want to clarify that the closed session is a public meeting. It's just closed to the public because we are in negotiations for the sale of certain property in Columbus.
Thank you, Bill. We're on to item B, consent agenda. The consent agenda is considered as one item of business. It consists of routine administrative items or items not requiring discussions. Items can be removed from the consent agenda at the request of City Council or staff members. Item number 2, approval of the September 25th, 2024 City Council meetings. The reason I read that one out is we want to approve that one. Items 3 through 8 I'd like to table until another time. I think they need more review.
Okay.
And I move to approve the consent agenda as presented in the February 12, 2025 City Council packet and the supplement bill list, which was distributed as a handout to council members prior to the meeting. And like I said, table items 1 through 8.
No, 3 through 8.
Read what, 9?
3 through 8.
3 through 8, yeah.
So we're approving 1, 2, and 9,
Correct.
correct? Okay.
So I second.
We'll take a vote.
Can I clarify, number 2 predated Mr. Wendell and I, so we would abstain from that, correct?
Well, you weren't here, yeah.
I attended the meeting, but I wasn't.
So I think you can probably clarify this, Bill. This comes up a lot.
There's 2 ways it's interpreted. I think the standard way that's been done here, if you weren't there, you didn't vote, but I've also had explained to me that if you attended the meeting and you read the minutes, you could vote on it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. City Attorney.
Either way works. Our typical practice is not to vote on meetings that you didn't attend. But of course, since we have video technology, you can watch the meetings.
So we did attend, it just weren't. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we take a vote, Jennifer?
Jenny, aye.
Okay, Scott, I'm going to abstain. I did attend those meetings. However, I don't feel very comfortable accepting my own resignation in item 9.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Ron, aye. Item C is presentation items, council action. Number 1 is a public forum. We're going to ask the public if anybody would like to step forward and state their concerns. Please state your name and your address and pull the mic right up to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Derek Lind. I actually live in Ramsey. We're handing out some materials right now. Unfortunately, I've only got 7 copies, so it would be just the city council members and then the attorney and the city administrator. I'm actually with a group called ACIT, a citizen group for election integrity. We were here last fall. First of all, I want to say thank you for passing that post-election review. You were one of 7 cities to do that. We appreciate that. ACIT has been in business now for 3 years. It was actually started by a Columbus woman Brenda Miller. I think you guys know her well. The reason I'm back tonight is Anoka County is in the middle of purchasing brand-new pole pads. And we've been jumping up and down for 2 years telling them to get rid of these things. These are electronic pole pads. We used paper until 2016. We've given you guys a presentation on that. I know we have some new faces here on the council. There's 3 reasons why we think this is a terrible idea. The first is we think they're a waste of money. The second reason is we absolutely believe they're a security risk. And then the third reason is we have kind of a legal question that it's a question we'll bring up in the very end. So if you could look at that packet real quick, I'll kind of walk you through that, and this will be real quick. The first issue, I believe it says data security. That should be the first page of the packet there. At the end of the day, these pole pads are iPads with cellular service that depend on third-party software. That is never going to be more secure than paper at a local precinct. I don't care what anybody says, trying to appeal to your common sense there. That's all they are. iPads, cellular service, third-party software. You could, and if you look at that page there, you can see the pros and cons of using electronic through paper. You can go to the second page, please. We'll talk about cost a little bit. I don't know how many of you were at that presentation by Anoka County on January 29th, but Tom Hunt stood up and he said these are going to cost about $100,000. Our numbers are coming in at about $850,000. And if you look at that, actually, if you go to page 3, that probably tells you a little bit more. There's more to it than just the hardware. Now, Tom did say he had some state money. I believe he has said in the, because I listened to a recording of the presentation, there was $160,000 in state money. So the original bill was $271,000 just for hardware from BPro No Inc. But then after that, you got all these other things that go with it, and you can see the list of items there. And then there's a first year, a second year, a third year. It goes all the way down to 6 years. I'm not going to go through every detail with you. You can read that on your own time. But if you add it all up, we get a much bigger number than $100,000. So we would say it's a waste of money. These things only last 5 to 7 years. That's what Tom said in his presentation, and you only use them on election day. So why are we spending that kind of money for something like that? By the way, county just raised our taxes by 16.86%, so they should be cutting costs everywhere. I understand that's not your problem, but we're making the money case. The last item, if you go to the very last page of that packet, there should be a JPA from the city of Inver Grove Heights down in Dakota County. Anoka County has been saying that they have the authority on these pole pads. They can tell you, they can force you to use them. And in fact, when they pushed these out in 2018, it was kind of pushed out quietly, and it was done among staff. Anoka staff was talking to the city staff. This was a major change to our election system. Should have had a political process involved. You guys should have voted on that up or down, but I don't think you knew about it. You guys probably weren't here in 18, not sure if that's the case or not. But what's interesting is we found in Inver Grove Heights, that city has a JPA with Dakota County. And so that's kind of our legal question. We don't give legal advice. You got an attorney, you can look at that. But at least in that circumstance, we're assuming that Inver Grove Heights was able to vote on this, whether or not they wanted it. So I'm trying to be brief here. I don't want to take up a lot of your time. Do you guys have any questions? I know you weren't expecting me to show up tonight, but anything? Nothing? If you do, you can reach out to Brenda. You guys know how to get a hold of her, and we'll try to get your questions answered. I want to thank you again for your time, your support, and thank you for passing that PER last year. That was a very big deal. So,
Well, thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
have a good day. Thank you.
Derek.
Anybody else from the audience for the open forum? We're going to go to the Zoom or online. Anybody out there that wants to make a comment on open forum? I don't see anybody, so we're going to close the open forum and go on to item number 2 under C2, CTI garage condos conditional use permits. Jack?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have Eleanor Hahn here with us tonight, and Eleanor will go over the staff report and present the findings and the recommendation of a conditional use permit for CTI garage condos, and then be available for any questions regarding those recommendations. Eleanor?
Hi, thank you, Jack. Everyone can hear me all right?
Yep.
Yeah? Okay. So we've recently received a CUP application for the amendment for the CTI garage condos. They've been in our community for a number of years. The first CUP was issued back in 2008, and since then they have come forward every couple of years to add an expansion or change some of the amendments, some of those conditions. This will most likely be the final amendment to the CUP and the final expansion of the garage condos. And so we really wanted to take a minute to make sure that we have all of those conditions sorted out, everything's down pat, as this will probably be the final amendment to that. Some questions came up after the public hearing hosted by the Planning Commission back on January 15th regarding the fact that after this amendment, the CUP will change hands from primarily being under Joe Basie to the HOA as a whole, and how that legal transition will work, and then what kind of conditions that we can have to mitigate any effects that will have as it moves forward in the future and changing hands consistently. And so you should have a couple of different staff reports in front of you, one that was submitted last Friday as a part of the packet, and then another one right as a handout right before this meeting with a couple additional edits as well. Primarily after the public hearing, we double checked with Anoka County Sheriff's Office and confirmed that there have been no written police reports nor any complaint calls on record for this facility. And then I also added that the city itself has not received any complaint calls in at least the last 5 years. There were a couple of issues with the neighbors a number of years ago, but those have resolved and we haven't had any issues. In the conditions, we changed a couple of things. Sorry about that. Since the public hearing and then again right before this meeting, primarily regarding that transition to the HOA ownership. We've also added something in condition number 18, starting there, ensuring that any buildings that are remodeled as time goes on in the future are consistent with the performance standards of the initial buildings. Changing condition 19 to allow small amounts of gasoline and motor oil to be stored, which is consistent with the facility's HOA bylaws and covenants. As it's a garage condos, they're going to have some gasoline and some motor oil, and we should allow that in a reasonable amount. The main big thing is making sure that the HOA informs the city of any changes, edits, or amendments to those bylaws and covenants, just so that we are informed, and also gives us a updated list of contact information for board members annually. So we know who to reach out to when Joe is no longer the person in charge, and that we can communicate with the facility as time goes on. I think that covers it, but does anyone have any questions for Joe or I?
Yeah, this is Scott. What is a reasonable amount of gasoline?
Yeah, that's pretty understandable.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I would just interject that reasonable would be in light of the use of the building. So these are condos, they're garages. So, enough to power a car, that's a reasonable amount. Enough to power 10 cars, not a reasonable amount. I think the reason that you use the word reasonable is because it's different based upon the use or the user, the type of vehicle that's in the garage.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure.
And I'll just comment too, Scott, I had actually brought that up because their bylaws state that they can do it, and then our CUP said that they couldn't, so I thought we needed to be consistent between those two documents, and it made sense to me for the reasons that Bill brought up.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for the education. I appreciate it.
This is Janet. I had a question, but this is probably more for Bill. So I'm looking at condition 24, and I just, I don't know how you revoke a CUP on something like this. So can you walk us through like what the process would be if we really ran into problems?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, Council Member, with any conditional use permit, the council does have authority to revoke a CUP. It's done rarely. It's done after notice and hearing, and the reasons for it should be pretty substantial or significant. In my mind, when you have a condominium, you wouldn't revoke a CUP for the violation of one owner. You would do it if there was a violation in the common area, there was consistent problems with the property as a whole. But if you have one owner who's a problem, you would go through code compliance enforcement rather than revoking a CUP. Revoking a CUP is the ultimate hammer. Again, it's rarely used. I've only seen it done a couple of times. It was done once here in the time I've been here. And so it's kind of the option of last resort.
And then my second question is, what happens if sometime in the future they decide to dissolve their HOA?
Mr. Mayor, Council Member, that is also a rather involved process because the common elements are held in common. And so whenever there's a common interest under state law, you have to have the common interest community type of ownership. They could dissolve the association, but then they would all own that property in common without the rules, guiding the use. So again, it's an unlikely scenario, but as insurance companies are kind of getting out of the business of insuring condominiums because of problems with costs and basically it's a long warranty period under condominium law, I'm seeing more and more clients come to me and say, how do I get this building or this unit out of the association? And it's not an easy process, but essentially what would happen, it's like if say you have lakeshore property and there's a bunch of cabin lots and they own the private road all in common, they don't have to have an association, but they own it in common, and so they're all responsible for it. So if you could dissolve the association, I'm not sure that you could, but if you could, it would all of the owners would share in common ownership of those common elements like the driveway, the parking areas, I think there's a grill area or I don't know do you still have a campfire there?
Yes, we got a picnic area, correct.
Picnic area, that's it. I was struggling for the name of but all of those things would still be owned in common. So they can't get away from that. It's not like they can, I think what you're getting at is who's responsible for that.
Yeah, and how do you enforce or address any issues with noncompliance? I mean, there's 100 and however many, 50 now. I mean, there's a lot. So, and some of those folks don't live here. In fact, many of them don't live here. So I just wasn't sure if that happened, if that then gives you grounds to revoke the CUP, or, I mean, I just curious, like how you even deal with something like that.
You could, I mean, if problems arise, you could revoke the CUP, but then you still have these units and what happens to them. So I think it could be problematic. Oftentimes there's a supermajority vote required to dissolve the association. So I don't know if it's 3/4 or 80% or some high number. So it doesn't happen often. But I do know that insurance premiums have been going up on these types of facilities. Now, I don't mean the garage condominiums. I mean condo facilities that are in a condominium association.
So the way this condition is written still makes sense for a CIC?
It does, because we could have problems with the common elements.
Okay.
And that would be one way to enforce compliance.
Ron, to Bill, question on the HOA. So that's typically homeowners association, right? These aren't really, they're not livable spaces, are they?
That's correct.
Is this just a generic term that's used for this type of development?
It is.
Okay.
For lack of a better word, you could say the CIC association.
Sure.
Which is a common interest community. you could give it a different name, but it's been referred to as homeowners association, and I don't think that's problematic. We definitely don't expect people to live in these units.
Yeah, I knew there was some kind of talk around whether or not they could or couldn't live in them back in the past, so just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
And
If I could interject, the exact name of the association is Garage Solution Condominiums Owners Association.
Great, thank you, Joe, appreciate that.
so just for, Eleanor, we could clean this up by just saying owners association, striking the word home.
Perfect.
And I wanted to make one other clarification. I was reading through this afternoon, and there was a prohibition against businesses. Let's see, do you remember which number that is? We did some time ago have somebody, not in this location, but another location, wanting to start a business, and there was just some wording I wanted.
It's 21.
It's 21.
All right. No units shall be used as a business. The units aren't used as a business. They're used for a business or occupied as a business. So just a little bit of wordsmithing there.
That can be changed, yeah.
Yep, Bill, that's in our HOA rules also.
Good. Used for operation of a business. Just a little tweak there.
I have one question. This is more for our city administrator. Do we have any citywide policies about HOAs? I mean, this brings up more questions about policies that we maybe should put in place for HOAs and not specific to the garage.
No, they've been treated on an individual basis, and maybe it's something we need to look into.
Mr. Mayor and Council, one of our longstanding lines that we've been careful with as a community is HOAs are a private document. They're between owners. And so we get notice of them to make sure that somebody's in charge, that, roads are being cleared if there's an association. But we rarely dictate the contents of a HOA because they are private documents between private parties.
And I think this mainly focused on having a contact and ensuring that the city is aware of. And so even for residential, it's important to know maybe who would be the contact for those HOAs, as I think my point, or what I'm trying to get at.
As Bill stated, it is a private interest group, but, maybe we need to have a few just basic checklist policies like these that are mentioned so that we're sure we have contact information and have some assurances that some of these other services are being provided. Not that we can control them, but we do know that they're there.
Thank you.
I would also like to add to everybody that we do have a professional management team, a company that manages the HOA for us. They basically help us run meetings, they pay all the bills and make sure stuff gets, if there is a complaint, they're the ones that handle it all.
I got a question, Joe.
Yes.
On your letter you wrote on December 11th, and I talked to Ellie about this. It says you're currently using 122.5 gallons of water
Yep.
a day. So when they figured this out in 2008, the septic system and that, did they figure out how much water each unit would take and how many units you would have? Because you note that 300 gallons is what Olson says is what it's the peak then?
Yes, so it was designed for 300 gallons per day. That was designed by I guess you call it a septic designer, a sewer designer. And we have the two systems. So the one north one, but what I'm adding to now is actually what we call the southwest system. And that's the one that's at 120. So we can, we have plenty of room to add to it.
Okay.
And with the amount of work we'll be adding, we'll never maximize that out.
I just brought it up because I thought that was odd. How many units you have open now, 100 or 90?
Well, there's 135 units right now, but like I said, that's split on the two systems.
Okay.
We have two mound systems out there. We have the original CIC 292, that's on one system, and then the 320s all on a separate system.
I just thought that was such a low amount, but then.
It is, and you know, I bet you not even half of these have a bathroom in them. And then, you know, so many of these, you don't even see the owner out there. I mean, you could go a month before you see the owner out there.
There's some more.
Yeah, there's a small group you see almost every day, but the rest of them, they just come and go, and they probably don't even use a bathroom half the time when they're there.
I just look at it. I washed my car in my garage, and I probably used 10 gallons. And I thought, if you have 135, that's a, you know.
Yeah,
I must be
well,
wasting
that's
a lot
another
of
thing
water.
that's interesting. I have the floor drains, and we do all that to code, and I bet you I only have about 6 people that actually wash your car inside the garage because they have so much stuff in it they can't wash it without getting everything wet.
So really, it's more of a storage center.
It really is. That and a place to, you know, some guys work on cars, but so much of it's just used for storage.
It must be.
There's very few guys that actually are doing much out there, quite honestly.
I go by, I see always, like you say, the same people out
Yeah.
there. So, well, thank you. Anybody else have any other questions? Discussion?
Nope.
Well, I'll make a motion here. Make a motion that I move to approve the conditional use permit for CIT garage condos.
This is Janet, I second.
Any discussion? Any questions? Let's start with you, Rob.
Rob, aye.
Janet, I.
Scott, aye.
Jenny, I.
And Ron, aye. So the motion's approved. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, well, thank you. Have a good evening.
You too. We'll go on to item number 3, companion animal care agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The companion animal care agreement was discussed at the January 8th, 2025 City Council meeting and resulted in additional information being requested as to the Northwoods Humane Society impound services. Staff and Councilmember Hegland reviewed this matter with companion animal care on January 28th, 2025. As stated at the January 8th council meeting, the city, through companion animal care, currently impounds animals with Northwoods Humane Society. There is no contract with Northwoods Humane Society for this services. Companion Animal Care's previous impound partner, Otter Lake Animal Care, ended impound services due to lack of staff and space for housing animals. As a result, Companion Animals Care secured the use of Northwoods Humane Society as an impound service into their facility in Oakdale is open in May of this year. The companion animal care agreement proposed for council approval is a solution to not having a contract with Northwoods Humane Society, as it is to be effective immediately and not delayed until May 2025. Companion animal care is essentially leasing kennel space from Northwoods Humane Society while companion animal care is being built. This allows Northwoods to provide interim service without Northwoods needing to spend time drafting impound agreements across the 25-plus Minnesota cities they have contracts with, and since they are only providing impound service on a temporary basis. This impound agreement would serve as the agreement during the periods Northwoods is being utilized and will be the impound agreement once the companion animal care center is open, eliminating the need to draft a new agreement. As the use of the Northwoods Humane Society impound services is an interim solution, the companion animal care impound service agreement is to become effective January 1st, 2025, instead of the current renewal date of May 2025. The new agreement is designed to save municipalities impound costs. Companion Animal Care is requesting that the City of Columbus approve the exhibit in Attachment 1 of this packet so animal control service in the city continue as normal. Once the Companion Animal Care Center is complete in May of 2025, this contract will remain in effect and there will be no need for an additional or modified contract. On the Companion Animal Care contract in Attachment 1, there have been a few modifications, so this will be the amended contract. One of the modifications refers to the listing of the address of the location and not referring to it just as a location. This is highlighted in the handouts you received under 1B and under, I believe it's 2B. So those addresses are listed. Also, the city attorney had one additional comment regarding indemnification under 5B, and I will let Bill explain that one.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you, Mr. Administrator. I did receive a question regarding responsibility for liability, and I went back and looked at the indemnification language, particularly in 5B. So it's typical that a service provider would indemnify the city against damages because they're providing the work. But, a lot of contracts are drafted with mutual language, which is fine, but I want to strike in line 1, 2, 3, 4, arising out of or resulting from the performance of work under this agreement, and then but only. So the city would only be responsible for claims that were caused by their negligent acts, errors, or omissions, which are going to be pretty much non-existent since we're not performing the work. So I wanted to clarify the work is not being performed by the city, but rather, as in 5A, the work is being performed by the contractor. So if you just strike out arising out of or resulting from the performance of work under this agreement, semicolon, but only, then we've got a sentence that makes sense. And I don't know, Councilmember Hagelin, does that address your question?
In part, I still am a little confused because the agreement for the impound is now between CAC and Northwood Humane Society. So, and we don't have any agreement. We're not party to that agreement. So all we have is what we have in front of us, and I don't see anything in there that defines who is liable should something happen to a party's animal that is brought to Northwood Humane Society and is there within that 5-day period. I don't see anything addressing that, so that makes me nervous.
Yeah, and what I try to do with, kind of a surgical strike on this is to make it clear that the city is not responsible for performing the work, which would include housing the animal.
Okay.
My only concern is if I, mark it up too much, we're going to go another round and we don't have an agreement. So I'm at least comfortable that shifts responsibility for the work clearly where it belongs on the contractor. But if there's other language that you or other council members would like to see in here, we could certainly propose that.
So if there isn't, if all that exists between CAC and Northwood Humane Society is a lease agreement, does that still cover us if they're not a subcontractor to CAC?
You're correct in saying that the only agreement you have is with CAC. Mm-hmm. And so we're not a party to that lease. And so we don't have any obligations under the lease.
Okay.
Yep.
Then I'm good.
Good.
All right.
Any other comments?
Thank you for looking into that.
Sure.
So,
Before we make a motion, do we have to add that in there to remove that?
yeah, the motion would include making those two changes under 1B and 2B, and with the change that the city attorney recommends under 5B. And with that too, we can make those changes and approve that, and I can get them to make that change, send it back to us, they can sign it, and we can sign it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to come back.
Yeah.
So I can make the motion. So then I would move to approve the companion animal care agreement as presented in the amended agenda item C3 handout of February 12th, 2025 City Council packet with the changes that were discussed tonight related to the location of the impound facility in items 1B and 2B, and striking the sentence in items 5B arising out of or resulting from the performance of work under this agreement, semicolon, but only.
This is Scott, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion. Any discussion? Any questions?
Confirming it was 5A and not 5B, correct?
No,
It was
5B.
5B.
Yeah, 5B.
5B.
The change was in 5B.
Oh, okay.
Any other discussion, comments? Hearing none, we'll take, do we have this seconded?
We did.
Oh, Scott, yeah, sorry, right next to me. I didn't hear you.
What?
We'll take a vote. Jennifer?
Jenny, I.
Scott, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Ron, aye. We'll go on to item number 4, 2025 Commission Liaison Appointment.
Assignments of city council persons to commissions, committees, authorities, WMOs, and other public advisory boards as liaisons or members are recommended by the mayor and confirmed by city council, with the exceptions of liaisons to the Coon Creek Watershed District and the Forest Lake Cable Commission. The appointments to these positions were made and approved at the January 8th and January 22nd city council meetings. In discussion with Mayor Hanegraaff recommends the appointment of Scott Wendell as the city council member for the Forest Lake Cable Commission and Jennifer Lattin as the council liaison for the Coon Creek Watershed District. There was a question posed to me about a liaison for the Fall Fest Committee. We have a Fall Fest Committee that will probably be scheduled for February the 25th next week, and that topic will come up at that time.
Anybody have any questions on this or comments?
So this is Janet. I just have, do we want to add Jeff as the member at large for the Cable Commission on this table? Jeff Doreen?
There's a handout too that updated the organizational chart that Jeff Doreen is a citizen appointee to that. He was appointed.
Oh, okay, sorry, I see, okay.
He was appointed for 2 years back in December.
Yep, sorry. I was looking under the Cable Commission line instead of at the bottom. Great.
And Jennifer, you see you'd be an alternate for the Park Board?
Yes, confirming correct.
And Rob, the Fire Board's okay?
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions?
Did we name Coon Creek?
Jennifer was.
Oh, okay.
And Jennifer, I will get up with you and discuss. Coon Creek has 3 different sets of meetings. They're all available to attend virtually. A lot of them are in the day. I did talk with Tim Kelly, and he was glad to see that we're appointing a liaison. Thinks it'll result in better communication with us. But I'll get up with him, and you and I can talk about the meeting schedule.
Thank you.
And then everybody understands we got the 3-month cycle for liaison for the council. And if you can't make one or you have plans, give me a call and I'll sit in for that one. Okay, having that done, I make a motion that I move to approve the appointments of Jennifer Lattin as the city liaison to Coon Creek Watershed District and Scott Wendell as the city council member on the Forest Lake Cable Commission.
This is Jenny, I'll second.
Having a motion, any other discussions, questions? Hearing none. Rob?
Rob, aye.
Janet, I.
Scott, aye.
Jenny, I.
And Ron, aye. The motion moves on, is approved. We'll go to item number 5, check signing authorization, electronic, I'm sorry.
City Council discussed converting the manual signing of checks to electronic signatures and discontinuing hand signing each page of the list of bills submitted for council approval at each meeting at the February 4th, 2025 workshop meeting. Direction was given to staff to include this request as an item for consideration at tonight's meeting. In addition to transferring electronic signatures for checks, staff is also recommending that the custom of each council person signing every individual bill list at regular council meetings be discontinued. The roll call vote for the bill and supplementary bill list approves and accomplishes the same result with less inconvenience and more inefficiency for the timely processing of claims and payments. So at this time, council is requested to approve those 2 recommendations and discussion items we had at the work meeting. To answer just a few questions maybe in advance is our bank has a policy that accepts facsimile or electronic signatures, and also the fact that we're working with Banyan. Cheryl can answer any questions in detail. The big question with them is how do we format the check so we can get the 3 check signers on there.
Any questions? Well, then I'll make a motion. I move to approve the electronic signing of city checks by authorized signers and the discontinuance of council signatures on bill lists submitted for approval.
One point of history, this is really a holdover from our town board days, and it's held on for almost 20 years, so that's impressive.
Yeah, we've been a city for 18.
Yeah.
Wow.
So question then, is that eliminating these?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so it's only going to be the check signers. We won't look over these anymore and sign off on them?
You've done your last one.
Yes, tonight we all signed about
Wowzer.
14 or 15 pages, so.
Yeah.
And you know,
Everybody know.
The benefit of that is that sometimes the council member misses a meeting.
Yep.
Sometimes they attend remotely. Sometimes they forget to sign them. Then we have to try to contact you. It affects your schedule, and sometimes it's delayed the payment of some
Sure.
bills. So this is really a good move for efficiency of making prompt payments.
Thanks. And I do appreciate you sending out the weekly or biweekly bills and that, so that's been helpful.
And then approval process, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I have a question. It's a policy question. So is there a written policy somewhere that dictates that when we do it the current way, there has to be, all of us have to sign, but in this new way, there does not, just needs to be a majority? I'm just wondering, I mean, if there isn't, that's fine, but if there is, then that policy should then be amended to reflect a majority instead of a unanimous?
If there's an issue on the bill list, the bill in question should be pulled for discussion. So if it's disapproved, it doesn't affect the rest of the bills. So if there's 3 or 4 bills in question and we go to approve the bill list, you would move to approve those bills, then approve the bill list that you had no questions on, then go back and discuss each one of them individually for your approval or disapproval.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about an individual dispute on a bill. I'm talking about unanimous versus majority. So I mean, if we don't have a policy, I mean, we've been doing it for 20 years. I'm assuming somewhere it's written down that that's how we have to do it. But if it's not, then
Noted.
we're good. Okay, that's fine.
It was a practice that came from the town board, and it just continued through all the years. And
Okay.
I think if you research it, I don't think you'd find
Okay.
because town board government, runs with a much smaller staff usually, and so all the board members signed off.
We do not have a policy for this.
Okay.
It will change our process. So right now, we print the checks for you to sign. We would not print the checks until Thursday morning now. So we would want you to go through, we get your approval, and then we would print the checks and issue those. So it will be a change. We will no longer be printing the checks for council. We will wait until after council, and we will print them the following morning.
Okay.
Well, we have a motion on the table.
This is Scott, I'll second.
Any discussion? Any questions? Hearing none? Jennifer?
Jenny, aye?
Scott, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Ron, aye. The motion passes. We'll go on to item number 6, Lake and Crossways Lake Drive streetlight installation.
City Council reviewed information regarding the installation of a street light at the intersection of Lake Drive and Crossways Lake Drive at the February 4th, 2025 workshop meeting. As a result of that discussion, staff was directed to include this item for consideration on the February 12th, 2025 City Council agenda. There have been concerns expressed to the city regarding the difficulty of seeing Crossways Lake Drive intersection with Lake Drive at night. This is more of a problem when traveling south and turning left from Lake Drive onto Crossways, but traveling the opposite direction is also an issue. In addition to the difficulty of locating the intersection in the dark, the shoulder width on Crossways is narrow with a steep slope on the south side of this intersection that drops 10 feet to the bottom of an embankment. This condition, along with poor visibility at night, exposes vehicles that had oversteered to the potential of sliding into the depression at the bottom of this bank. There have been a number of these type of incidents at this intersection, with the most recent being a mail van on December 16, 2024. Installing a street light at this intersection would greatly improve visibility and minimize these types of accidents at this location. Placement of a light at this location would be contracted through Connexus. Connexus would install the light and bill the city for the cost. There's an existing pole with a transformer at this intersection, which would reduce the cost of installation. The estimated cost would be approximately $1,500, and Connexus would bill the city for the monthly electrical charges. The city would have to obtain a right-of-way permit from Anoka County Highway Department for this work, but the permit fee would be waived. This permit is for records of improvement and a review of the Connexus design requirements. Adjoining property owners will be contacted to explain the improvement and address concerns to minimize any impacts of artificial lighting created by this project. So at this time, staff is looking for city council direction to proceed with application to Connexus for the authority to enter into an agreement with them pending approval of cost. I think we also discussed the fact that we need to look at maybe some better signage at this intersection. And also, we agreed that we would look into some other intersections in the city that might have the same issues.
Any discussion?
So we talked about this a lot at the workshop, and I still think it's a good idea, so I don't have anything more to say.
Rob?
Yeah, I just had a question on, and I'm familiar with the area, but I haven't noticed or not. I know like on Howard Lake Drive, because that's kind of a similar situation, right? Where people are throwing their binders on quick to make a left or a right. But is there a sign on Crossways Lake Drive that's on the opposing side? And that might be helpful too, because I want to say there was, or is there on Howard Lake Drive?
There is on Howard Lake.
And it is helpful, right? For someone that's not from the area, they can catch that, you know?
The sign on Howard Lake Drive was a compromise to a street light.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So that was initially what we talked about, and then we opted to go sign instead of street light there.
Sure.
That's another intersection that we got to talk about.
And immediately as I was looking through it here, that popped into my head, right?
That's a dark intersection,
Yeah.
especially when you're coming south. You have
And it's another one of those that are hard to see if you're turning out onto Kettle River, right? There's quite a grove of trees there to the north, so.
Right.
And
that's why we
that's one
added
that also would benefit from a little bit of an intersection improvement there, so that the intersection intersects at 90 degrees rather than a skewed angle.
Right.
Well, Jack, you gave us a list of 4 or 5 that
Yeah.
you thought.
That was one of them.
Yeah. Another one was Notre Dame and Broadway, but
Correct.
I think Crossroads Church has got that big light there now. They might be illuminating that whole area.
Well, another thing that I want to look into also is exchanging the location of the directional sign at the Columbus City Hall with the one that says no passing on the shoulder. It blocks that sign until you're right on it. The sign is small and very hard to read at night, so if you're looking for City Hall and you're not familiar with the location, it's very easy to miss that intersection.
Any other discussion on this topic?
This is Jenny. So my major question is focusing on those, obviously this is important for tonight, but will we discuss this at a future meeting then regarding other intersections?
Yes, we'll develop a report and bring that up at a future work meeting, probably in March or April.
Okay, thank you.
So then the only thing, I would just like to thank Dan and Pat for bringing this up to us, because, I mean, I turn on that road all the time and it never occurred to me. I mean, it's so, sometimes the obvious eludes us. So thank you for bringing that up. It's a good suggestion.
Well, I'll make a motion then. I move to authorize staff to submit an application to Connexus for the design and cost of a street light at the intersection of Lake Drive and Crossways Lake Drive. Authorize staff to enter into an agreement for the installation of a light pending council approval of the cost. Examine the need for additional signage at the intersection and prepare a report for council on future sites that may need street lighting.
This is Janet, I second.
Any discussion? Any questions? Hearing none. Rob?
Rob, aye.
Janet, I.
Scott, aye.
Jenny, aye.
And Ron, aye. We'll go on to item number 7, the Sunrise River Water Management Shed Report, or whatever.
Attached in your packet is a Sunrise River WMO 2024 mini report. It's pretty self-explanatory. This was sent to us by Jamie Sherburn, he works for the Anoka Conservation District, and he's the administrator for the Sunrise River WMO. It does list something about the WMO, what their priorities are, some grant programs, and some of the major accomplishments they made in 2024. They'll be coming out with an annual report here fairly soon, and we'll probably be getting their budget information requests probably at the end of this month. So that's just there for their review, and if you have any questions, we can answer them here, or we can get Jamie to give us an answer if we don't have it at hand.
Or I'll just add that, so this was actually a draft report, so if there's any changes or things that you'd like to see in it, I would need to know by next Thursday, which is our next meeting. And you're right, we'll be approving a budget next Thursday, so you'll be getting that very soon.
So there's no action required in here. It's just if you have any question or want to make any comments on it.
Okay. Anybody have any questions? Can we move on to item number 8?
Public forum sign-in sheet and guidelines. City Council discussed incorporating guidelines of procedures and conduct to the public forum sign-in sheet at the February 4th, 2025 workshop meeting. Council directed staff to make changes to the guidelines that were previously presented and include them for consideration on tonight's meeting. The proposed sign-in sheets with guidelines is attached in attachment 1 of your packet. And staff is requesting that City Council approve these or make any changes necessary. There were certain changes that you requested last meeting that were made, some things that were left out, specifically the one that related to issues not on the agenda that was removed. So what we have in this, the public forum will be open to comment on any item.
I have a question. The way that this is written right now, it says a resident or property owner may address, but our very first person today was neither of those. I don't have a problem with non-property owners or non-residents do it. So do we want to broaden that sentence? Just say attendees or
The public.
public? Yeah.
That's a consideration. Sometimes some cities actually limit this to residents and property owners, but I've also been told that kind of maybe infringes and borders on First Amendment violations. So to give you 2 examples, East Bethel limits it to residents and non-property. No, they allow anybody to speak. The city of Cambridge limits it to residents and property owners. It's totally up to us, however we want to do that.
I'd be in favor of just changing that to the public. And
I
then,
think you'd be hard pressed to tell somebody who came to a public meeting that they couldn't speak if
yeah.
you have an open.
Well, we usually err on the side of being more inviting.
Problems.
Yeah.
The other
For
question.
instance, the gentleman who brought the election issue.
Yeah, yeah. The other question I had is, I like these guidelines, but I'm wondering about the need to have them sign in, and especially sign in prior to the time, because I don't know how you do that with Zoom.
Well, we'd have to put in, it's a good point, we'd have to put in there a special exclusion for Zoom. And generally what happens if you require them to sign in before they can speak, one of the staff members would go get the sign-in sheet and give it to the mayor so he could call them up. And Zoom would have to be excluded from this because there's no way for them to do that.
I just went through that in St. Cloud on Monday night, and it helps the record keeping. Just to know who was there and the topic that they were addressing. That's probably the only reason to do it. Creates a little decorum.
I guess we don't usually have people lining up to talk to us. It might be trying to solve a problem that doesn't exist. I'm all in favor of having the guidelines so that everybody knows what the guidelines are, and actually having those guidelines as part of maybe our agenda for the people who are attending by Zoom. But it just seems, again, that it's not necessary to ask people to sign up if they're going to get up here, put their name and address, and tell us what they're going to talk about anyway. And, if it changes and we have a line of people that want to talk to us, then that makes sense. But, it's unusual that we even have anybody that takes advantage of that. That's just my thoughts.
And you could have it, I'm just, based on experience, you could have it as a preference. It's there, people can sign up,
Yeah.
but if they don't, it's not like they can't come to the table.
Yeah, and right now it says must, so that's where I'm coming
Or
from.
encouraged.
Yeah.
I know.
That'd be good.
Of the two cities I mentioned previously, one enforces it very strictly. The other one does not. If you don't sign up, it doesn't mean you can't speak. The ones that sign up are given the opportunity to speak first, and then the invitation is extended to anyone else that wants to get up and make a comment.
And I also like the ability for somebody to sign in and provide their information, because that may be a situation where we may want to reach out and contact them after the fact. So we have their contact information that we might not otherwise get. And again, that can be optional. So if you want it, desire a response, we have that information handy.
The only issue I have is item number 8. Well, really, the whole thing, because people come in to sign, they're not going to sit out there and read this whole thing. What do we do? Do we set it up on the table where they read it may not be used for personal attacks, to air personal grievances, make political statements? They may not even read this.
No. And
Mr. Mayor, for years, it was something similar was on the desk in front of you. And so when the mayor would open up the public open forum, that would be read. Now, you don't have to read this lengthy thing, but there was a shortened version that was laminated and sat here all the time. At some point, it wasn't here anymore. But so you could condense this. I think you've done this a couple of times when you've had a full house, where you've read kind of the rules of the forum.
another way, we'd have to look around and figure out a little bit better way, but it could also be displayed on the screen. Where I was before, we didn't have the Zoom. Everything was a live broadcast. So we'd have the agenda on the screen, and part of the agenda on the public forum included this statement. So it was very visible to anybody that wanted to speak, and it was referred to, not read in its entirety, but to make sure that everybody had read the guidelines for the public forum before they got up. So we just need to be able to remind stuff. Here we can have it on the sheet out there and maybe put it on the door, but.
Sounds good.
So then, are we agreeing that number 2, we would change, instead of saying a person desiring to speak must sign up, we would say are encouraged to sign up?
Or requested to.
Or requested to? And then on number 8, I would change may to must. It's not optional.
What?
In number 8, I would change may to must. The public forum must not be used to make personal attacks, blah, blah, blah. May means optional.
Okay.
And
I
think
understand.
the way you said it is correct. It's not personality attacks, it's personal attacks.
Yes.
So just strike ITY.
Any other questions about this or comments?
I guess I have a question. So per se, we have a developer that's in here that has done wrong in previous cities or not followed through on things. And, someone from another city comes and says, hey, you don't want this developer in your town because XYZ, they didn't follow through with what they said. It might be another council person, might be a resident from another community. Is that blocking somebody from doing that with this? Because I feel if there's someone coming to our town that might not do well by us, I want to know about it, and I don't want this to impede that.
Mr. Mayor and Council, and I've said this previously, we have to be really careful with business defamation or any form of defamation. So we can ask someone not to make those attacks. If they do it, it's part of the record. Sure. But we don't want to encourage it as a community, because the only thing that should be presented are things that can bear up under scrutiny. They're factual. We can scrutinize whether they, in fact, did occur, or we don't really want to encourage that sort of thing, because it ends up putting the city in a position of creating a forum for business defamation.
Okay.
Which is an actionable claim that can be made and create some liability.
Sure, so like you'd said previous, public documentation, I'm thinking about the business I'm in, a contractor doesn't pay his workers, developer doesn't pay the contractor, things like that. I, as a council member, want to know about that and don't want people like that doing business in our town, so.
Right. And the way I would read this as a personal grievance is that is public information that you're bringing to the fore that's different than so-and-so's got, they're doing campfires every night,
Sure.
outside my bedroom windows. That's a personal grievance between two property owners. This isn't the forum to resolve that. That's kind of what I read in that. And
Yeah.
I don't know, Jack, if that's.
No, thank you for the clarification. I think I definitely got what I need there.
Yep.
Thank you.
I would agree with the personal grievance thing, that's a neighbor versus neighbor issue.
Okay.
I'm good.
So I make a motion that I move to approve, including the additional guidelines as presented in attachment 1 of this item to the public forum sign-in sheet, plus the changes by Councilperson Hageland. How's that?
This is
Do we have
Jenny,
to
I'll
put the
second.
words in?
Go ahead.
Yeah?
I've got that recorded.
Okay. Did you second it?
This is Jenny, I second.
Okay. Was seconded. Any comments, questions? All right, we'll take a vote. Jennifer?
Jenny, I.
Scott, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Ron, aye. We'll go to item D, consultant liaisons and staff reports. Number 1 is the city engineer, Brian.
Good evening, Mayor and Councils. I didn't have anything listed on the agenda for this evening, but this afternoon I did get a request from the Rice Creek Watershed District to consider an additional extension to the 60-day review period for the Hornsby Eureka Wetland Impact Permit that was jointly submitted by both Forest Lake and the City of Columbus. The previous waiver was granted by both cities, but there have been some delays associated with determining the eligibility of the project to use the local government road wetland replacement program credits. The current waiver expires on February 14th, this Friday. Forest Lake has already granted the extension waiver. The request is for Columbus to grant the waiver extension for another 60 days. If it's not granted, the permit application will be denied by the Watershed District, and both cities will have to reapply for another permit. So the request is for the council to consider extending the waiver.
This is the road there, Eureka.
Eureka Hornsby project, yes.
So can you explain again what, the waiver of what?
It's the 30-day review period.
Yeah.
When you apply for a permit,
Yep.
an agency has to act within 60
60
days.
days, right.
And if they can request an extension, to have an additional 60 days.
Yep.
That's what they're requesting.
Got it. So it's just like what we do when we extend.
Yes,
Got it.
correct.
And like what we do.
Yeah, when we extend.
Yep.
Jack, any comments?
No, I think that's reasonable, and that's something we should consent to and respond that we're okay with that.
Should we make a motion then?
That would be good if it's on the record.
I make a motion that we extend the Rice Creek watershed permit for another 60 days. Is that good enough, Brian?
For Hornsby?
For Hornsby.
Hornsby, I'm sorry. It's Eureka, though. I don't.
It's Rob, I'll second that.
Any other discussion, questions? Take a vote. Jennifer?
Jenny, I.
Scott, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Ron, aye. Anything else, Brian?
Nothing wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. Go on to city attorney. Bill?
Just a quick legislative update, since there's now a power sharing agreement in place at the House, so they're actually both bodies have power sharing agreements. The work can start. It's been very hard to get anything jacketed, get any bills introduced because of what's been going on with the legislature. So for the newer members, the 2 items that are in the city's legislative platform, actually there's 3 items. One is simply monitoring. The first item, which has been a number of years, we've been trying to get some relief under fiscal disparities. The city is a net payer and a significant net payer given its size into the fiscal disparities revenue sharing pool. The other item that actually we did get into the bonding bill last year, but the bonding bill was not passed, and that is a modest request for funding of North Hornsby. And that's a project that would connect a reconstructed Eureka Avenue with the other portion of Hornsby that has been rebuilt. So there's a segment that would need to be reconstructed so that you'd have kind of fresh pavement all the way from Forest Lake through to Highway 23. So those are two items that the city is actively pursuing. In addition, we are monitoring sports betting activity. Our legislative delegation is really active in that, but we just as a city monitor that because our largest employer and biggest property taxpayer is running Aces Harness Park. So that's more of a monitoring exercise. The other two hopefully will result in bill introduction. Our legislative delegation has been very helpful in recent years in leading the charge. So throughout the session, when there's something to update, we'll update you. I think you have for your calendars, I think March 6th is City Day on the Hill. We schedule that on the same day that the League of Minnesota Cities is up there. So if you want to attend the morning session with the League, you can do that. We have an afternoon session with our public affairs group, which culminates in going around and talking to legislators about our interests. So if you don't have that on your calendar, please put down March 6th. For those who don't attend the League event, it'll start in our office with lunch, our St. Paul office. So more to come on that.
Thank you, Bill.
You're welcome.
Item number 3 under D is the council's report. Jennifer, do you have anything?
Nothing.
Nothing? Scott?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Rob?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So the only thing I have to report, we had that email sent to us about the state of the state deal with Met Council. Did attend that. It was at Allianz Field. Not a lot of stuff that was pertaining to us up here, right? Had been questioned by other cities, why would Columbus be here, even hooked up to sewer? So enlightened a few people about where Columbus was and who we are, but also did connect a little with Gail Sederberg. She did state that she wants to come back and do a presentation to us this year again. I believe she came last year, the year previous. No, she was claiming she did, and I thought it was maybe one of them meetings that I was out of town for or was on Zoom. So that was an offer that was put out to us. So
I think the last time we had anybody here was with Vento.
Yeah, Sue. Okay, so it was Sue.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering too because I didn't recall it, but I just went with it. So mainly based around what's going to happen around Allianz Field and big developments down there. Not a lot pertaining per se to our area, but wanted to make sure I was there in case there's something that was. So,
Rob, we've reached out to she's our sector rep, and she wants to come here in March or April to give a presentation, so we'll get her scheduled on the agenda.
Sounds good. That's all I had to report, Mayor.
Thank you. Janet?
Yeah, the one thing I have is that you and I attended the local government officials meeting that Anoka County put on January 29th. There were a couple things that they talked about that I think are of interest to us. One has to do with the opioid settlement program. So this is a lawsuit that was I guess filed and settled. There's some cities in Anoka County that are getting a monetary settlement. In order to get a monetary settlement, you had to be part of the lawsuit. We are not, so we're not getting money. But I think the thing that we could benefit from is part of the funding that Anoka County is getting is to purchase Narcan for AED kits. So if you want to have some here in case somebody overdoses or someone in the park overdoses, you want to have some, I would suggest you contact Patty Constant, who is the program director for this program, and she, I believe, will be able to send some our way, and then you would lock it up in the AED kit or wherever you lock those kinds of things up. The other thing they talked about quite a bit was what Derek mentioned, and that is the discussion of the pull pads. it's a really tough situation, I think. I think Anoka County is fatigued of the inquiry, but I think that they bring up some really good points. I would like to invite Tom Hunt here to talk to us, and maybe at a workshop, and so we can ask him some questions. I mean, I've had a conversation with the folks from ACID, and I do think that they have some valid points. I also think the county has some valid points. I talked to our Lori Spangler about like, well, what would it mean to your operations if you had to go back to paper? And she's like, oh, don't even talk about that. So, I mean, I get that it's not efficient at all for us to do that. So I'd like to think that if we sat down with Tom, maybe there'd be some middle ground there. To the point that Derek made, there was some discussion about the interpretation of the state statute that the county is, and the county attorney interprets to give them authority to basically make the decision that they're going to use it, and then all the municipalities under the county have to follow that. It's a may, not a shall. And basically what Brad Johnson said, and he's the county attorney, is that's the way we're going to interpret it unless somebody challenges us. So it would take a lawsuit to settle that argument.
There was one change in the county. The county did previously do 3 random tests. Now they've expanded it to 9.
Okay, the post-election review? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so I do think that they've given some, but I don't know, I wasn't quite satisfied. There was a lot of people who wanted to talk to him, and there really wasn't time to ask all the questions, so I think if we could get him here, that might be helpful in a workshop, if you wouldn't mind doing that. And then the last thing, I'd sent you, Jack, but it was later this afternoon, a copy of the legislative platform that Anoka County has. So it was a little 3 trifold thing. So maybe you can send it out by email to everybody on the council. I was thinking maybe we could have a copy of it here, but basically it outlines what the priorities of Anoka County are, their legislative priorities. Unfortunately, one of their legislative priorities runs smack dab against one of our legislative priorities. So we'll get to talk about that more later, I guess. They are not in favor of what we're doing with fiscal disparities. That's it.
That's it? Well, I have something on my agenda tonight. The Forest Lake Times always asks the mayors or whatever to write an article or something about what's our city up to and what we're doing. And I wrote one, and it's going to be sent out here soon. And we always want to make contact with the public, We never, tonight we have a big crowd. But other than that, we don't usually see a lot of people in the city. So an example of what I plan to do is, there's some people out in the audience sitting here, is open up the doors to come and see the mayor and a council member. And what I'm talking about is at the Lions Pancake Breakfast. They have it every 3rd Sunday. Maybe from 10 o'clock, open the door to the chamber. And I would be here, and any council member that wants to come along, as long as there's just 2 of us here, we're not violating any rules, and leave the door open in case somebody wants to come in and talk to us about their concerns about the city or anything. And I know a lot of you come to the Lions Breakfast. I talked to Gina about it, and she was all for it. She's with the Lions. And one reason this started up is, I think, because of Dan Pat back here, because that's where we found out about the Crossways, the street light and stuff. We would have never known unless you guys wanted to come in and talk to somebody in the city or whatever, but we're just having coffee and pancakes, and we found that out, and it generated a conversation with the council, and we're moving along. So I don't know if this is gonna, we only have 3 left this year, and that'll be this Sunday, and then March and April, they don't have it, May, and the next one's in September. So I'm gonna open the door up here this Sunday at 10 a.m. And I'll tell you what, I'll do it alone the first day and see if we, for a couple months and see if we generate anything. I mean, I know you saw everybody wasting 2 hours if nobody comes in, but you never know. You never know what's going to, a lot of people that come to the pancake breakfast aren't from our city, but a lot are from our city. So it's another way to open the door, and any way we can communicate with the public, I think, is a good role. So anybody have any questions on that? And if you're interested in it, let me know. And I mean, we can sit here and have coffee. So that's all I have to say. And what's next here? Item number 4, Personnel Committee report. Janet?
There's a report in your packet, and it was sent out in advance, and it has to do with a planning commissioner appointment. This is filling the vacancy that was created when Scott was seated on the council. I don't know, I don't want to read the report. It's a page long here, but if anybody has any questions or wants me to highlight anything, I can certainly do that. Otherwise, I can make the motion.
Have any questions?
Do you have any questions? Anybody have any questions? I will say the candidate, Kim Snell, is in our audience. There she is right there, so thank you, Kim. Very well qualified to be on our planning commission, and she's had an interest in serving in that capacity for a couple of years. So I'm glad that everything lined up in terms of her availability and a vacancy. So with that, I would make the motion to approve the appointment of Kim Snell to fill the planning commission position vacated by Scott Wendell, with that term of appointment to expire on December 31st, 2027. Actually, I think that's wrong. It's 2025.
Yeah.
Sorry. 2025.
This is Scott. I'll second.
Any discussion? I'd like to say she's a master gardener too, so we can also bring our tomato plants in. And no comments, questions?
No, I'd just say that is a very impressive resume, and she's bringing a lot to the table for the city. So
You're right.
it is fantastic.
I appreciate your efforts to help us out. Thank you. Take a vote. Jennifer?
Jenny, aye.
Scott, aye.
Janet, aye.
Rob, aye.
And Ron, aye, and welcome to the group, Kim. Thank you. We'll go on to the Parks Board report. I have nothing on that. We're going to meet coming up here in a few weeks. Item number 7, the Public Works report.
No report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Jim. City Administrator's report.
I'd like to report a bit of good news. The city met their and exceeded their recycling tonnage requirements for 2024. And all that credit goes to our Deputy City Clerk, Lori Spangler, who administers that program and did a fantastic job on it. So next year when we come up this year, we'll be applying for some additional grants. One will be for the recycling of plastic campaign, garage sale, yard sale signs, to try to add some other services to that. That also includes our drop-off, our organics, our recycling. The way that is funded by the county is every city in Anoka County gets $10,000, and then we get $5 per household. In addition to that, there's a formula for labor. In our case, it's $7,000 that we can put for staff salaries for administration and anything that has to do with the recycling program, and then the additional grants that we can apply for. So the city's budget on that was $31,000, all funded by the Anoka County and from the taxes they collect from their recycle fees. And again, Ms. Spangler did an excellent job. It's probably the second or third year in a row we've met our recycling goals. The county does set those for us, and it's based on population. So we've got a good program, and we just look to expand it. The only other thing is that after we go through the announcements and the adjournment, the city attorney will give us a direction to go into closed session.
Okay, thank you, Jack. So announcements and reminders. President's Day, February 17th, 2025, the City Hall is closed. The Planning Commission meeting for February 19th, 2025 has been canceled.
Yeah.
Next week, and a city council meeting for February 26th the next one, 2025 at 6 PM. And item number F is a closed session, so we have to adjourn the meeting then, correct? Anybody would like to make
And
a,
I'll just read the notice. Negotiations to sell city-owned real property identified as PID 243222120005 and PID 243222110006 pursuant to Minnesota statute section 13D.05, subdivision 3C3. And that is the open meeting law. And we are allowed to go into a closed session for the purpose of real estate negotiations.
thank you, Bill. So then make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Second, Rob?
Any other questions, comments, statements? Jennifer?
Jenny, aye.
Scott, aye.
Janet, I.
Rob, aye.
And Ron, aye. Session's closed. Thanks, everybody, for coming.